For the introduction, the main objective of this report is to research on how much the chosen company have been implicated with the financial fraud activities by authorities around the world. Nonetheless, we are required to focus on how the scandals have affected the auditor and what are the rules according to the case. Our group was assigned Deutsche Bank as our research company. Did you know about Deutsche Bank? Let me introduce you. In 1870 in Berlin, Deutsche Bank was founded. In that time, Deutsche Bank was founded as a specialist bank for financing foreign trade and promoting German export. On 22 January 1870, the bank statute was adopted, and on 10 March 1870, the Russian government granted it a banking license. This bank has three founders, who is George Simons, Adalbert Derbrot, and Ludwig Bamberger. They aspire to be a trustworthy advisor to their clients at all levels by upholding high ethical and honesty principles. To promote understanding on matters of common concern, they also participate in open discussion with the media. The Deutsche Bank vision is a leading global investment bank with a strong and profitable private clients franchise mission.
Hi, my name is Najia binti Muhammad Zaidi and my matric number is 273335. Deutsche Bank was implicated in one of the biggest money laundering scandals in the history of the world. From our research, we found out that there have been many scandals that have been involved by Deutsche Bank. Below, I would like to list a few parts of financial scandals of the companies. The first case is the Danske Bank. As we know, the Danske Bank money laundering case was one of the biggest in European history. Between 2007 and 2015, the Estonian branch non-resident portfolio handled over $200 billion in suspicious transactions. Deutsche Bank, Swedbank, and Raiffeisen Bank are being investigated for allegedly assisting Danske Bank in transferring the illegal funds. The second case is the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The bank processed hundreds of transactions for Jeffrey Epstein, who is a convicted sex offender. Officials say that Deutsche Bank inexcusably failed to detect or prevent millions of dollars of suspicious transactions. The settlement comes almost exactly a year after Epstein was arrested on accusation that he abused women and girls. The bank paid $150 million to settle the allegation that it maintained weak internal controls, including processing transactions for Epstein. The third case is the interest rate manipulation. The abbreviation Euribor and LIBOR apply to reference interest rates. The Euro interbank offered rate, which is the Euribor, established the interest rate at which European banks can lend one another euro-denominated debt. LIBOR, which is the London interbank offered rate, acts as the basis for many types of financial transactions, such as derivatives or mortgage. In 2013, Deutsche Bank paid the highest fine of $725 million. The fourth case is violation of US-Iran embargo. According to US regulators, the bank lacked adequate policies and procedures to ensure compliance with sanctions. In 2015, Deutsche Bank needed to pay $200 million to the New York Department of Financial Services and $58 million to the Federal Reserve. The fifth case is the US mortgage transaction. Subprime mortgages are widely regarded as the source of problem of the global financial crisis. Above all, it was Deutsche Bank that purchased the poorly secured mortgage from US homebuyers. They wrapped them in highly complicated financial products and slapped them with top ratings, then market them to other banks as secure investment products. When the economy crashed, the value of the bonds lost. Meanwhile, Deutsche Bank had long bet on a crash and made money from it. The last case is money laundering in Russia. The bank secretly used stock trades to launder $10 billion in dirty money in Russian rubles. Due to the dollar of nature of transactions, the US authorities interfered once more. Deutsche Bank has been fined more than $630 million for failing to avoid the Russian money laundering and exposing the UK financial system to financial crime risks.
Now I'm going to explain about the effect toward the auditor. Based on the numerous accounting scandals that were stated before, we know that the confidence in the reliability and the objectivity of the financial statement of interest party has been significantly reduced, where the category of the fraud-based are asset misappropriation, corruption, shame, and the financial statement fraud shame. Therefore, the issue has been affected to the reliability auditor by disease, concealment, or violation of trust professional duty toward the auditor. Firstly, first effect that they have the effect to the auditor is the effect that tremendous loss to the business were review of the rule which related to the auditor independence, while the auditor is concerned with fraud that cause a material misstatement in the financial statement, and accordingly two types of intentional misstatement relevant to the auditor are misstatement or resulting from fraudulent financial reporting and misstatement resulting from misappropriate of asset. Next, second effect that it has been affected several companies as they are facing trouble with the purpose of making sure the audit and consultancy fees, which are provided by the firm, do not face the same issue. Not only, but the several company in the Germany has also been set the report about the issue, while the related firm give a clean bill of health every time, leading right up to the revelation of the scandal, even though the auditor have barked at it. Some have argued that the firm auditor could become exposed to potential criminal penalty to security branch. Third effect toward the auditor is the audit regulator effort to prevent fraud cannot be denied. Little attention has been paid to external auditor application regarding corporate corruption when business collapse unexpectedly or it is discovered that management or key worker engaged in illegal practice. The financial statements of this business are often called into questions. When financial manipulation is discovered, the external audit is also scrutinized. According in the case of Deutsche Bank, who the vice chair of audit and along the other four partners was fired by the KPMG in April 2018. Accordingly to the allegation, the plot to steal regulator inspector data took place between 2015 and 2017. This made the Deutsche Bank scandal thus create a challenge for auditor. The fact that the Deutsche Bank auditor KPMG give an qualified opinion on the organization financial statement continue to cast doubt on the audit service value. The last effect to the auditor is the auditor under higher pressure to prepare and conduct audit in such a way that the material statement resulting from fraudulent actions such as bribery are identified and recorded. If external audit lack of competence, particularly in applying their skill in a corruption environment, the audit process as a whole is worthless. Ignoring the corruption would damage audit firm reputations and it could create the doubt about the importance of the external audit. The reason audit should be concerned about corruption is that the misstatement caused by corruption could be more costly to the audit firm and likely to the profession as a whole that a misstatement affected by the other factor, such as in the case error. So based in what I have been saying, the audit should make sure that the advice or service does not include management responsibility or power, which must remain strictly with the management or the audit entity. They ought to protect their independence to evade the possible interest conflict in the company. Their official position should not be used for private purpose so that the risk of corruption can be avoided to maintain their objectivity and independence of the auditor.
In perspective of the detection of errors and fraud, advanced evidence offers a range of reasons for the judgment and recognition of the auditor. Some experts state that the auditor's job is to identify fraud as an audit target, while others claim that it is the auditor's responsibility to disclose to shareholders any action of dishonesty that have occurred and have impaired to the ownership of the content financial statement. So, we will discuss about the roles of auditor.
Hi, my name is Nur Izzati binti Abdul Rahman and my metric number is 272940. I will explain about the roles of auditor. The first one is execute the audit based on International Auditing Standard ISA. Next is the case when Danske Bank, where the bank handled the fraudulent transaction over a large sum. The number was commonly misinterpreted by the public. Instead of mixing lawful and illicit transaction as fully money laundering, the auditor should then perform the audit in compliance with International Auditing Standard ISA. They include basic principle and essential technique as well as applicable guidance in the form of introductory documents and other content. Although conducting an audit help to prevent robbery and mistake, the auditor is not responsible and cannot be held responsible for them. Second, approach the audit relationship with a professional skepticism. For example, when the bank handled hundreds of transactions for Jeffrey Epstein, and if Jeffrey Epstein was a sex abuser arrested, the bank could not identify or discourage millions in dollars of fraudulent transaction. Although the judgment of the auditor is based on honest proof, it cannot assume the deception or mistake has been detected. The auditor should treat the audit partnership with professional skepticism and acknowledge that the financial statement under certain circumstances may be mistaken.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Adis Natasha binti Azizan. My metric number is 272649. Now I will continue about rule of auditor for the next one. Next is fail to apply a certain audit standard. Based on case in interest rate manipulation, there are 10 Deutsche Bank employees were already fired. However, 4 of those employees were later reinstated by German court because involved in interest rate manipulation. Those reinstated employees will not be allowed to hold company job, submit interbank offering rate, or handle US dollar transactions. The auditor negligent because they were not aware that the Deutsche Bank fraud was based on illegal interest rate and unregistered share price. That's why all auditors should use their interface to analyze data set to identify trend and pattern that might suggest fraud and funding abuse. According to the bylaw section 100C, professional competent and due care, the auditor must have the knowledge and skill that they must be professional in it to ensure that the client get a true picture in that company because everyone including stockholder, investor and banker depends on the auditor. For example, the auditor at the Deutsche Bank must apply reasonable care and skill to ensure the financial statement has been fair and true views. Thus, the auditor must be liable for negligible because they do not practice the standard of performing the audits. Okay, next is fail to practice professional skepticism. Okay, the auditor must maintain professional skepticism in the auditing process. This is because it is a mentality that necessary a critical assessment of audit data as well as a prohibit mind and keep awareness of system that might suggest possible fraud misstatements. The auditor must have a skeptical mindset such as asking questions like why not, how, when, and where. While we know the company is doing well, an auditor must exercise caution in order to avoid issuing an unqualified opinion on the company's financial statements, which might minimize audit danger. For example, the auditor that perform audit at Deutsche Bank should not be easily satisfied with the observation and should exercise professional skepticism in every stage of an audit. The stage including evaluation of the client, audit planning, performing audit tests, and reporting findings. Based on cash US mortgage transactions, the auditor should ask the Deutsche Bank about the purchase of mortgage from US buyer. Why and when they buy that mortgage. This is because it can enhance that the auditor ability to identify and respond to the conditions that might indicate possible misstatement. Even though this attitude is not appropriate to detect the fraud, it is still important to have an independent of mind. Independent of mind is important because like the auditor that do audit at Deutsche Bank, they just ignore the US mortgage transaction that made by Deutsche banks without asking and checking that transaction. Therefore, it is very important to have an auditor of professional judgment in performing an audit. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shamita, daughter of Balan, and my matrix number is 273077. I will be talking about the roles of an auditor in the cases of money laundering in Russia and also the violation of US Iran embargo. As for the money laundering in Russia, there is no much detail about what the auditor of the company executed. It is only informed that the bank's supervisory board audit committee reported that the Russian laundromat possessed high risks including monetary settlements, client attrition and related litigation, and the report was considered strictly confidential. Money laundering is an illegal process of making money involving in criminal activities such as drug trafficking. The illegal act is then disguised to look legitimate so they can use the money without paying taxes. Money laundering is a very common activity among businessmen. Every year, 2 trillion worth of money is being passed through money launderers. The question now is that what should an auditor do if the company that they are responsible of auditing is involved in money laundering? The Supervisory Board of Auditors and Financial Accounting and Reporting, cooperating with the Swedish accountants auditors, have listed the steps the auditor have to apply under the Money Laundering Act. The following are a few steps of the steps outlined. First one is verify the identity of the principal before a business relationship is initiated. Then second one is take appropriate actions in order to inspect the customer's ownership and control structure. Thirdly, preserve documents and data from the implementation of measures to achieve customer due diligence. The fourth one, examine and report transactions that the auditor suspects or has reasonable grounds to suspect to be part of money laundering activities or terrorist financing. The last but not least, provide information to the finance police. Providing information to the finance police should not be disclosed to the customer, company or any third party to respect the announcement. Auditors should also carry out internal procedures to ensure that the company complies with the existing acts. Moreover, auditors must form a comprehensive policy with the company, that the entity should organize educational programs relating to money laundering to prevent them in the future. To conclude, auditors are also responsible of capturing any sort of money laundering activities carried out by the company they are assigned. Finally, Deutsche Bank was doing business with Iran and Sharia, the US sanctioned countries. The Federal Reserve mentioned that the company did not have any enough policies and procedures to ensure all the activities and transactions complied with the US sanctions laws. Consequently, the company had to fire 6 employees and 3 other employees for involving the company's US operations. In this kind of situations, there is no specific auditing procedures to detect them. Nonetheless, auditors can notify the governance about it. Auditors must be very cautious as sometimes even the governance might be involved in this kind of activities. A thorough check on the background is wise. Before reporting, and if the governance is involved, auditors must report to the next highest level of authority, the audit committee. Furthermore, auditors are required to consider whether the non-compliance with laws and regulations affected the company's financial statement, also their report. This is because if the tax laws affect accruals and the amount recognized as expense in the accounting period, in that case, the applicable laws and regulations may affect the amount of revenue accrued under government contracts.
As for the conclusion, Deutsche Bank has been involved in one of the world's largest money laundering cases. According to our report, Deutsche Bank has been involved in a number of controversies. Both internal and external auditors play a big role toward the scandal happening. The auditor's responsibility for identifying fraud has not changed under audit standard. Fraud management entails falsifying financial statements or misapplying accounting rules, while misappropriations, overvaluation of assets fraud by dealing with the parent's branches or subsidiaries, and failure to disclose significant details are all fraud that can affect the Deutsche Bank's company.